Hello again, CCA. As we continue to celebrate Black History Month, History in the Making, let's meet another African American Christian who's making history for Jesus right here in Philadelphia. Two of our sixth graders, Joseph Menezes and DeAndre Bradshaw, are going to introduce us to Pastor Mark Abrams and share his life story with you.
Born January 28, 1962, Mark Abrams is the fifth of six children in the Abrams family. His dad died unexpectedly when Mark was 2 years old. His mother raised six children by herself, 3 boys and 3 girls. Mark proudly proclaims his mother is a godly woman who taught him about Jesus, but Mark didn't always accept her faith as his own. He attended Robert Morris Elementary School and Roberts Fox Junior High School. When he went into Benjamin Franklin High School, he was one of only 28 students chosen to be in a special program called Motivation, which was for kids who were doing really well in school. He had a typical childhood. Like most of the kids around him, Mark remembers that the world was different then. In cities like Philadelphia, families worked hard, went to church, and fellowship came naturally between homes. Mark didn't think specifically about what he wanted to do when he grew up, but he knew he'd likely be singing. He sang for school, in church, and he also sang with some of his siblings. During his teen years and early adulthood, Mark stopped going to church. He wasn't mad at God or not wanting a relationship with Jesus. He was just very busy and didn't make it a priority. His first job was singing for events, but it didn't make him enough money, so he picked up a second job working for KFC. He really liked it. Mark didn't know it at the time, but every opportunity the Lord blessed him with was preparing him for something greater. At KFC, his manager saw that he was a hard worker and a good problem solver. Within a year, Mark was picked to learn from other managers so he could have better and better jobs at KFC. He and another assistant manager from a different KFC liked to compete with each other to be the better producing Kentucky Fried Chicken store. It was good-hearted fun, but it helped him to stay motivated and to learn and succeed. All the while, Mark kept singing, quite seriously. In the late 1990s, Mark was offered a record deal. He loved the singing, but didn't like the business part of singing. About the time he received the record deal, Mark was out playing with friends, playing pool, and he felt the Lord speak to him and say, "Leave, I want you to follow me." Mark accepted salvation from the Lord right then and there on that Friday night in October. When he woke up on Saturday, he knew it had truly been the Lord, and he knew he was different. He started going back to church that Sunday. He began to go to the streets of Philadelphia to tell people about Jesus. He felt an urgency to witness and minister to the people. He was attending a good church and getting great teachings from the Bible. During the next season of his life, the Lord called him to work in the mental health field, helping people who were sad, scared, and overwhelmed and confused. He had no training and had not gone to college for this. He simply couldn't imagine why he'd been sought out for this job. But if you remember, Mark knows that everything the Lord brought to him was preparing him for something greater. Mark calls these weird miracles. Mark spent a lot of time studying books that would help him learn about mental health so that he could better help people. His bosses saw this and not only listened to his suggestions about treatment for patients, but also gave him better jobs quickly. He eventually oversaw 16 programs for people in crisis.
No matter what Mark was doing, he said the Lord kept putting him in front. He was not a willing leader, and he'd rather stay in the background, but he knew he had a heart for those who were struggling, and found it incredibly rewarding to help them. On weekends and nights, he continued to serve the community and church, grow in his faith, and do a lot of outreaches. An outreach is an event that tells people that Jesus loves them and usually also gives them things that they might need, like food and clothing. It's often the first time these people experience God's love. Mark's outreaches were mainly for single moms, probably because he grew up in a big family with his mom providing for them, and so he had a heart for moms trying to provide for their children. During the season, he also met the love of his life, Charlene, and they got married. Eventually, he would attend a church, Calvary Chapel of Philadelphia. Hey, that's right here! He had a son by that time, and his son led him to the front of the church to meet Joe Foch. Pastor Joe and Mark became friends. Mark invited some of the pastors from Calvary Chapel to join him for an outreach. They were surprised when they saw the number of people being helped. There was worship, and with opportunities to receive clothing, food, and resources, and they were sharing the gospel. He invited the same group of pastors for an Easter outreach that was even bigger. God provided so many resources for the outreaches. They came from everywhere: clothes, food, and houseware. Mark became known for his outreaches and services to the community. On August 11, 2004, at the encouragement of Pastor Joe, Mark led his first Bible study at YMCA in the city, not far from where he grew up. The first week there were 6 people, the second 11, and the third 30. In a year's time, it grew to 100 attendees. Mark had to get creative with the YMCA to give him space. His Bible studies were so successful that he then started a Sunday morning service. Mark kept reminding people that he didn't want to be the pastor or the boss, but his experience with KFC and counseling made him a perfect candidate to not only feed the crowds, but to also love on them. Sunday morning services exploded in numbers. Mark felt that they should feed the people lunch because most were homeless, so every Sunday they'd have lunch following the service. He had the great idea to offer transportation tokens for certain special Sundays, so those who needed them could go visit family and friends. They offered haircuts and showers. Mark's hope was to help people get back on their feet with Jesus. Today, Mark is the pastor of Calvary Chapel Word of Life on Haines Street in Philadelphia. 2 years ago, they found their own building for worship. His prayer, and one that he shared for you to pray for as well, is that they'll reach even more kids. His greatest joy is discipling young men and preparing them to be godly husbands and fathers. He invites young men into his home on Monday nights for discipleship. He is proud of the number of young men walking with the Lord and all that they're doing as fathers, doctors, lawyers, pastors, teachers, police officers, and therapists. He gives God the glory for these young men and prays that more and more young men will come to Jesus. He and his wife are partners in life, partners in ministry. His son is grown, married, and raising Mark's granddaughter, who calls Mark Pop Pop. Mark truly has the heart of the pastor. He takes every chance he can to tell others how much Jesus loves them and show them that they are important and valued to God and to him. Through the ministry of Calvary Chapel Word of Life, Pastor Mark Abrams has continued to make history for Jesus right here in the city of Philadelphia.
Thank you, Joseph and DeAndre. CCA, make sure to check out the bulletin board across from the office to see some of the pictures shown in today's video. Let's continue to pray for both Rita Whitaker and Pastor Mark Abrams as they serve the people of Philadelphia with the love and compassion of Jesus.